Amelia sat in a small cafe, holding a warm cup of coffee. Her mind was full of thoughts. She had been working hard at her job for over a year, but every time she got a chance to share her ideas, fear held her back. What if people laughed at her? What if they thought her ideas were silly? So, she stayed quiet while others confidently shared ideas that were similar to hers. One evening, as she was scrolling through her phone, she saw a quote that stopped her, "You are your only limit." The words hit her hard. For the first time, Amelia realized she was the one stopping herself. That night, she made a decision. She would stop letting fear control her and start building her confidence. But where would she begin? The first thing Amelia realized was how much she cared about what other people thought. She spent so much energy trying to please everyone around her that she had forgotten to think about what she really wanted. At work, she dressed the way she thought her colleagues expected. In conversations, she held back opinions, worrying they might not be liked. Even her hobbies were influenced by what others seemed to value. One evening, Amelia spoke to her best friend, Sarah, about how she felt. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Amelia admitted. "I feel like I've been living someone else's life." Sarah nodded and said, "I've been there too. I used to change everything about myself to fit in, but it didn't make me happy. Then I realized something. No matter what I do, not everyone will like me, and that's okay." Those words stayed with Amelia. She decided to write down the things that mattered most to her, her values. She wrote about how much she cared about creativity, honesty, and kindness. These were the things that made her who she was, and she wanted to live in a way that reflected them. The next day at work, when a meeting came up, Amelia reminded herself of these values. She spoke up, sharing her idea even though her voice shook. To her surprise, her colleagues listened and even praised her input. Amelia started focusing less on what others thought and more on what she believed was right. She reminded herself daily, "I can't make everyone happy, but I can stay true to myself." Over time, she noticed something incredible. The more she acted authentically, the more confident she felt. People respected her for being herself, and she began to feel lighter, like a weight had been lifted. This was only the first step in her journey, but it was a powerful one. Letting go of the fear of others' opinions helped Amelia find her voice, and with it came the courage to move forward. Amelia's next challenge was dealing with the voice inside her head, the inner critic. This voice had been with her for years, whispering doubts like, "You're not good enough," or "What if you fail?" It was always loudest when she was about to try something new or step out of her comfort zone. The more she listened to it, the more it held her back. One evening, after a long day at work, Amelia decided to confront this inner critic. She sat down with a notebook and wrote down every negative thought she had about herself. The list was long. "I'm not smart enough, I'm terrible at public speaking, and I'll never succeed." Seeing her thoughts written out was overwhelming, but it also made her realize how harsh she was on herself. Then, she decided to challenge these thoughts. Next to each negative statement, she wrote a positive affirmation. For "I'm not smart enough," she wrote, "I'm capable and constantly learning." For "I'm terrible at public speaking," she countered with, "I can improve with practice." Amelia didn't believe these affirmations at first, but she decided to try repeating them daily to see if it would make a difference. The next time her inner critic appeared, Amelia was ready. She paused, recognized the negative thought, and replaced it with one of her affirmations. At first, it felt strange and forced, but over time, something incredible happened. Her brain began to believe the positive thoughts. Instead of thinking, "What if I fail?" she started asking herself, "What if I succeed?" Amelia also set small, manageable goals to help prove her inner critic wrong. For example, instead of diving into a big presentation, she practiced speaking up once in smaller meetings. Each time she succeeded, she celebrated the victory, no matter how small it seemed. These small wins began to chip away at the doubt she had carried for years. She also learned to treat herself with kindness. Whenever she made a mistake, instead of beating herself up, she reminded herself that everyone makes mistakes. "If I wouldn't say it to a friend, why would I say it to myself?" became her mantra. Over time, Amelia's inner critic grew quieter. By replacing negativity with positivity and focusing on her progress, she began to rebuild her confidence from the inside out. It wasn't easy, but learning to silence the inner critic was one of the most empowering steps she took on her journey to self-confidence. Amelia's next obstacle was social media. Every time she opened her apps, she was hit with a wave of perfect pictures and achievements. Friends posting about their promotions, exotic vacations, or seemingly perfect relationships made her feel like her life was ordinary by comparison. She couldn't help but think, "Why isn't my life like that?" The constant comparisons drained her confidence and left her feeling inadequate. One weekend, after spending hours scrolling through her feed, Amelia decided she had had enough. She realized that social media was affecting her mental health more than she wanted to admit. She thought back to something her friend Sarah had once said, "Social media is just a highlight reel. People only show the best parts of their lives, not the struggles." With this in mind, Amelia decided to make some changes. The first step she took was decluttering her social media. She unfollowed accounts that made her feel bad about herself, like influencers who portrayed unattainable lifestyles. Instead, she followed people who shared inspiring, honest, and uplifting content. Amelia also started limiting her screen time by setting a timer for her social media use. 30 minutes a day was her new rule, and she used the extra time to focus on herself. Amelia then began a practice that changed her perspective: gratitude journaling. Every evening, she wrote down 3 things she was proud of or grateful for that day. These could be as small as completing a task on time or as big as taking a step outside her comfort zone. Over time, this habit shifted her focus away from what others were doing to what she was accomplishing in her own life. She also began to notice the hidden realities behind the perfect posts. One day, she shared a picture of herself enjoying coffee on her balcony. What the post didn't show was the 15 minutes she spent trying to get the lighting right or the mess in the background she had cropped out. This realization helped her see that everyone, even those who seemed to have perfect lives, edited their reality online. By focusing on her achievements and cutting back on comparisons, Amelia felt a sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. She no longer felt the need to measure her life against someone else's highlight reel. Instead, she started celebrating her own progress, no matter how small. Letting go of social media pressure was a key step in Amelia's journey toward a more confident and content life. The final challenge for Amelia was learning how to handle mistakes. She had always been afraid of failing. Any time she made an error, whether at work or in her personal life, she would replay it over and over in her mind. She'd think, "Why did I say that?" or "I should have done better." Her fear of failing often stopped her from trying new things, because she didn't want to risk making mistakes in front of others. One day at work, Amelia was asked to present a new marketing strategy to her team. As she stood in front of them, her hands shook. Halfway through, she accidentally skipped over an important slide. Her heart pounded, and she felt like running out of the room. But instead of panicking, she took a deep breath and calmly said, "I just realized I skipped something important. Let's go back for a moment." She explained the slide, finished her presentation, and sat down, convinced she had failed, but to her surprise, her manager later told her, "You handled that really well. Everyone makes mistakes, it's how you recover those matters." Those words stuck with Amelia. She realized that mistakes weren't the end of the world. In fact, they were learning opportunities. From that day on, Amelia changed how she thought about failure. Instead of fearing it, she started embracing it. She reminded herself that every mistake was a step toward growth. If she stumbled, it didn't mean she wasn't good enough, it meant she was improving. She started taking more risks, speaking up in meetings without overthinking, and trying new things without worrying about being perfect. She even shared her fears with her friends, and they all admitted that they felt the same way. It was a relief to know she wasn't alone. Together, they encouraged each other to step out of their comfort zones and take chances. The biggest shift came when Amelia started seeing mistakes as progress. Each misstep was proof that she was pushing herself, learning, and growing. And that realization gave her confidence she never thought she'd have. Amelia's journey shows that confidence isn't about being fearless, it's about taking action despite fear. Now it's your turn. Start small, speak up, challenge negative thoughts, or take a risk. Every step counts. What's one habit you're working on? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.